The name of the game during the heyday of the Wild West was conflict. Whether it was between outlaws and settlers, bandits and lawmen, or rival factions competing for territory and survival, violence was an ever-present backdrop across the frontier. As settlers expanded westward, they were met not only by the challenges of the land, but by the relentless threats posed by those who operated outside the law. With the rise of vigilantes, renegades, and notorious criminals came the need for firepower that matched their daring and defiance. Outlaws equipped themselves with the best weaponry they could acquire, arming themselves for high-stakes robberies, gunfights, and ruthless skirmishes. This was a time when firearms became increasingly accessible, allowing infamous bandits, gunslingers, and fugitives to stockpile their arsenals. To gain a better understanding of the arms these infamous figures wielded, we're delving into the types of weapons that were critical to their survival and success on the wrong side of the law. Here are several specific weapons used by outlaws and villains in the Wild West. The Colt Single Action Army, also abbreviated as the SAA, emerged as a groundbreaking firearm that transformed the American frontier landscape. First introduced as Colt's submission for the 1872 U.S. military trials, this single-action revolver went on to serve as the standard U.S. Army sidearm from 1873 all the way through 1892. The weapon earned several nicknames, including Model P, M1873, and, most famously, the Peacemaker. Though manufacturing ceased twice during its history, public enthusiasm repeatedly prompted its return to production. The firearm's appeal stretched across diverse user groups, from frontier lawmen to cattle ranchers, and even notorious outlaws. While modern examples primarily attracted collectors and historical reenactors, the SAA's innovative design sparked numerous imitations from competing manufacturers. When development began, Colt faced restrictions due to Rollin White's 1855 patent, which gave Smith & Wesson exclusive rights to manufacture revolvers with bored-through cylinders for metallic cartridges. Once this patent expired in 1869, Colt engineers William Mason and Charles Brinkerhoff Richards developed the revolutionary design, officially designated as the New Model Army Metallic Cartridge Revolving Pistol. A fascinating piece of the weapon's history involved serial number 1, which vanished for decades until its unexpected recovery in a New Hampshire barn during the early 1900s. This inaugural model, chambered in .44 Smith & Wesson, packed substantial firepower with its 40-grain black powder load and 255-grain projectile. The SAA succeeded the Colt 1860 Army percussion revolvers, alongside other contemporary designs like the Smith & Wesson American and Schofield variants. Its reign as the military's primary sidearm lasted until the Colt Model 1892 double-action revolver took its place. Manufacturing encompassed several barrel configurations. Military cavalry units favored the 7.5-inch barrel, which brought the revolver's total length to 13 inches. Civilian and law enforcement personnel often chose shorter 4.75-inch or 5.5-inch versions. Compact variants without ejector rods gained informal titles like Sheriff's Model and Banker Special. A limited .44 Henry chambering appeared by 1875. The initial production run, termed pre-war or first generation, yielded nearly 360,000 units between 1873 and 1940. While available in over 30 calibers, the .45 Colt proved most prevalent, followed by the .44 40 Winchester centerfire and .38 40 variants. Historical accounts of outlaw Jesse James mentioned his use of various revolvers, including the Colt SAA. Different narratives of his death described him either wearing 2 pistols or carrying a single firearm. Bob and Charlie Ford ambushed him. Records suggested his arsenal included cap and ball Colts, Remingtons, and occasional Smith & Wesson or Colt single-action army revolvers. But Jesse James' favorite is old trusty Peacemaker. The Model P was also the weapon of choice for legendary bandits Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The Colt revolver, once owned by the infamous Wild Bunch leader, attracted a high bid of $175,000 at a California auction, according to the California auctioneers and appraisers. The revolver held historical significance, as Cassidy handed it over to a Utah sheriff in 1899 in an attempt to secure amnesty from the state's governor. The gesture reflected Cassidy's wish to leave behind his criminal life and become a regular citizen. Although Cassidy's bid for amnesty was ultimately unsuccessful, the revolver remains a tangible relic of his efforts to reform. The winning bid, placed in the autumn of 2012, was submitted by a buyer who remains anonymous to this day. The Colt single-action army transcended its role as mere equipment to become an enduring symbol of American westward expansion, forever linked to the legendary outlaws who shaped frontier history. Between 1877 and 1909, Colt's patent firearms manufactured their Model 1877 revolver, releasing 167,000 units of this pioneering double-action firearm. The weapon appeared in 3 caliber variants, each acquiring distinctive nicknames. The .38 Long Colt became known as the Lightning, the .32 Long Colt became known as the Rainmaker, and the .41 Long Colt became known as the .41 Thunderer. Despite their varying ammunition types, each version maintained a 6-shot cylinder capacity. William Mason, already renowned for his work on the Colt single-action army, spearheaded the Model 1877's development. This groundbreaking design achieved distinction as America's first successful cartridge-based double-action revolver. Customers could select from various configurations, including nickel-plated or blued finishes, complemented by case-colored frames. The barrel lengths spanned from 2.5 to 7.5 inches, with certain models lacking ejector rods marketed specifically as shopkeeper specials for discreet carrying. Interestingly, the widely recognized names of Lightning and Thunderer originated not from Colt, but from Benjamin Kittredge, a prominent Colt distributor. His marketing prowess extended to naming other firearms, including dubbing the single-action army the Peacekeeper and the M1878 the Omnipotent. The revolver's intricate double-action mechanism proved problematic, particularly regarding its trigger spring reliability. This characteristic led gunsmiths to joke about its frequent need for maintenance, with Gun Digest later declaring it the worst double-action trigger mechanism ever made. When the trigger spring malfunctioned, users could only operate the weapon in single-action mode. Visually, the Model 1877 resembled a compact version of the single-action army, distinguished by its distinctive bird's head grips, initially crafted from checkered rosewood, before transitioning to hard rubber. The weapon's design limited it to black powder cartridges exclusively, prompting Colt to explicitly warn buyers, not adapted for smokeless powder. Several historical figures favored the Model 1877. Manchester detective Jerome Caminada relied on the Lightning variant, while infamous outlaw John Wesley Hardin carried both Lightning and Thunderer models. Billy the Kid reportedly possessed a Thunderer during his fatal encounter with Sheriff Pat Garrett in 1881. A particular Model 1877, dubbed the Mama Day gun, gained historical significance through its alleged connection to Billy the Kid. This .41 caliber Thunderer passed through various hands, including author Bob Ward, who obtained it from Santa Fe auctioneer Will Channing. The weapon arrived with documentation mentioning William H. Bonney II, referencing Billy the Kid's legal name. In 2012, authentication by a Colt manufacturing historian identified the firearm as an 1877 .41 Colt double-action revolver featuring a 2.5-inch barrel and nickel finish. Shipping records traced its journey to San Francisco on May 11, 1881, coinciding with Billy the Kid's final days in New Mexico territory. Local legend suggested Billy the Kid might have gifted the revolver to Spanish-speaking community members who had sheltered him. Some accounts proposed he acquired the weapon while visiting John Chisholm's cow camp shortly before his death. Though definitive proof linking the Momaday gun to Billy the Kid remains elusive, this artifact embodied the mystique of America's frontier era, bridging historical fact with Western outlaw folklore. John Browning's innovative lever-action repeating rifle, the Winchester Model 1886, stood out for its ability to chamber the era's most formidable ammunition types. The firearm initially accommodated robust cartridges, such as the 45-70 Government, 45-90 Sharps, and 40-82 Winchester, later expanding to include the substantial 50-110 Winchester. Though designed for black powder, the rifle's robust construction allowed for an easy transition to smokeless powder cartridges, including the .33 Winchester, which debuted in 1903. Building upon Winchester's Model 1876, this advanced firearm incorporated a strengthened locking block mechanism that surpassed the earlier toggling system's capabilities. This enhancement, developed by Browning with input from William Mason, enabled the weapon to handle potent black powder rounds. These specifications established the Model 1886 as America's answer to high-powered hunting rifles. The introduction of nickel steel barrels in 1903 further enhanced the rifle's durability. The Royal Flying Corps recognized the weapon's potential during World War I's early phase, selecting 45-90 Sharps variants equipped with specialized incendiary ammunition to target German airship fleets. However, the rifle gained perhaps its greatest notoriety through its association with the infamous 1892 Coffeyville bank robbery attempt by the Dalton Gang. Gang leader Bob Dalton wielded a Winchester 1886 during the Brazen Daylight assault on 2 Kansas banks. His preparations included ordering elaborately decorated Colts featuring pearl grips, alongside fresh Winchesters and riding equipment, all scheduled to arrive before the October operation. His stated ambition exceeded even Jesse James' exploits, as he planned to simultaneously rob multiple banks. The gang's disguises proved ineffective when local merchant Alex McKenna identified them and raised the alarm. Armed townspeople confronted the fleeing outlaws with devastating results. 4 gang members perished in the ensuing firefight, while Emmett Dalton miraculously survived despite sustaining 23 bullet wounds. In the aftermath, authorities confiscated Bob Dalton's belongings. His Model 1886, along with additional items, including a Colt revolver, saddle, and scabbard, transferred to W.S. Upham through a court-authorized auction on January 14, 1893. The rifle's ownership history remained well documented as it changed hands over subsequent decades. The Winchester Model 1886 exemplified both technological innovation and cultural significance in America's frontier era. Its connection to the Dalton Gang's final desperate act permanently linked this firearm design to the dramatic conclusion of the Old West's outlaw age. From 1870 through 1915, Smith & Wesson revolutionized firearms technology with their Model 3, pioneering the top-break single-action cartridge revolver design. The weapon achieved distinction through its various iterations, most notably the Russian and Schofield variants. The Russian designation stemmed from an extensive 41,000-unit order placed by the Imperial Russian Army in 1871, specifically requesting .44 caliber chambers. The Schofield version honored Major George W. Schofield, whose cavalry-focused modifications shaped the 1875 variant. The U.S. Army's 1870 selection of the Model 3 as their inaugural standard-issue cartridge revolver represented a significant advancement beyond cap-and-ball technology, which suffered from slower loading times, operational complexity, and moisture vulnerability. By 1875, the U.S. Ordnance Board commissioned Schofield-modified versions, stipulating compatibility with .45 Colt ammunition. Instead, Smith & Wesson developed the shorter .45 Schofield cartridge. While Colt revolvers accommodated both rounds, the Schofield variant handled only its namesake ammunition. This limitation, despite government standardization of the .45 Schofield round, ultimately favored Colt weapons due to existing .45 Colt ammunition stockpiles. The Schofield Model 3 saw action throughout the Indian Wars, with documentation of its use extending into both the Spanish-American and Philippine-American conflicts. Its dependability attracted both law enforcement and outlaws across the frontier. Historical records connected the weapon to numerous legendary figures, including Jesse James, Bob Ford, Pat Garrett, Virgil Earp, and Billy the Kid. The revolver gained additional fame through its presence at the OK Corral confrontation, where Wyatt Earp wielded one against the Clanton gang. Among the Model 3's notable wielders stood outlaw Belle Starr, born Myra Maybelle Shirley in 1848. This educated Missouri native maintained Confederate loyalties during the Civil War, establishing connections with Quantrill's raiders, Bloody Bill Anderson's followers. Belle's reputation centered on her refined appearance, marksmanship skills, and practice of carrying multiple firearms, including her cherished Schofield 44, nicknamed her baby, alongside a Colt single-action Army revolver. Following her 1883 horse theft conviction, Belle exhibited exemplary prison behavior and attempted reformation upon release. Tragedy struck, though, when her husband Sam died in an altercation with law enforcement. Belle's own life also ended violently in 1889 through an ambush of unidentified assailants. Her association with the Schofield Model 3 symbolized the complex intersection of refinement and lawlessness that characterized America's frontier period. Samuel Colt introduced the 6-shot, 36 caliber cap-and-ball Colt revolving belt pistol between 1847 and 1850. Initially marketed as the Ranger size, before being designated the revolving belt pistol, the firearm gained widespread recognition as the Colt Navy. This nickname, though popular, had no connection to naval specifications or maritime use. The emergence of metallic cartridge firearms following the Civil War gradually displaced cap-and-ball weapons like the Colt Navy. Production ceased in 1873 when Colt unveiled the legendary single-action Army, or the aforementioned Peacemaker. Manufacturing statistics showed approximately 250,000 units crafted in American facilities, with an additional 42,000 assembled at Colt's London establishment. Compared to its bulkier predecessor, the .44 caliber Colt Dragoon, derived from the 1847 Walker Colt, the .36 caliber Navy offered enhanced portability. While the Dragoon typically required saddle-mounted holsters, the Navy's compact design allowed for convenient belt carry. The weapon achieved substantial popularity throughout North America's westward expansion, while Colt's aggressive international marketing extended its influence across Europe, Asia, and Africa. Each Navy revolver featured Waterman Ormsby's distinctive cylinder engraving, depicting the 2nd Texas Navy's triumph over Mexican forces at the 1843 Battle of Campeche. This artistic detail commemorated Texas's acquisition of earlier Patterson revolvers and marked Colt's initial commercial breakthrough, though ironically, the weapon found greater use among civilians and ground forces than naval personnel. The firearm's performance specifications included an 80-grain lead projectile achieving roughly 1,000 feet per second velocity, comparable to modern .380 ammunition, Users loaded the weapon with loose powder and ball, metallic foil cartridges, or Civil War-era paper cartridges, utilizing percussion caps for ignition. Despite its basic sighting system, comprising a brass cone front sight and hammer notch, the Navy demonstrated remarkable accuracy. Specialized variants included rare 34 caliber models and an experimental 40 caliber version developed in 1858 for U.S. Navy evaluation. Early production pieces exhibited unique characteristics, including the first model's squareback's distinctive wedge screw placement and cylinder bin configuration. Colt addressed evolving ammunition technology in 1869 by introducing the Thurr conversion model, modifying between 1,000 and 1,500 Navy revolvers to accept front-loading metallic cartridges, while avoiding Roland White patent infringement. The weapon attracted numerous notable users, including Wild Bill Hickok, Buffalo Bill Cody, Doc Holliday, Robert E. Lee, and Ulysses S. Grant, alongside countless frontier outlaws, gunslingers, and adventurers worldwide. Its dependability sustained its popularity even as newer firearms emerged. California folklore linked the Colt Navy to Joaquin Murrieta, whose 1853 pursuit by Captain Harry Love's bounty hunters ended with his death and subsequent decapitation. This violent conclusion, rather than diminishing Murrieta's notoriety, amplified his legendary status through dime novels that reimagined him as a righteous avenger. Tales of Murrieta's concealed riches persisted, particularly around Carpinteria. Local historians Arthur Miller Clark, Jane Cravens Caldwell, and Georgia Stockton documented accounts of diamonds supposedly buried at the Rincon. Though treasure seekers scoured the area for generations, these alleged riches remained undiscovered. A Colt Navy believed to belong to Murrieta eventually found its way to UCSB's Special Research Collections, obtained from an early Maricopa County resident. This artifact endured as physical evidence connecting the infamous figure to California's tumultuous past, as well as the array of armed outlaws across the Old West at large.